The following audio tapes are for authorized members of the Future Foundation. Unauthorized access is punishable by exile over the wall. This is a record of what life is like for those on Battleworld. It is the will of our one true Lord, Dr. Doom, that the evidence be gathered for what people live like on this world. Battleworld is the only barrier between life and oblivion, and there is a cost to preserving this existence. These are the stories about the cost of survival. Outside the Coliseum, Doomstadt. I join my host at a small rundown bar named Lee's. We have just witnessed a match between a super soldier and his arena partner, a Tyrannosaurus Rex, going toe-to-toe with an entire clan of Wolverines. While I am visibly shaken by the carnage I have just witnessed, my host seems at ease, as if the bloodbath we both just sat through brings him nothing but relief. He seems amused by this, and gestures for me to have a seat and share a drink with him.
It takes some getting used to. The Coliseum. Most men and women look at all those blood and guts and feel sick to their stomach. Not me, though. No. Somebody like me. That just makes me feel at home.
For the first time since I met my host this morning, he looks uneasy. I prompt him to tell me more about where he came from, but he simply eyes me suspiciously.
And you say you're writing this book for our generous Lord and Savior, Dr. Doom, eh?
That's right. He'd like it all on the record.
For who? Information isn't so free among the domains, you know. Sure, we all know about the different kingdoms and barons here in Doomstadt, but that's only because it would be impossible to hide it here. All the barons coming and going, whispering their little secrets to their servants and whores. What's the point of hiding the truth here? But the mutants. I hear they don't even know there is a world outside their walls. Poor bastards.
I am not authorized to respond to this, so my host shrugs and continues talking.
Well, who cares? What's Doom going to do to an old man like me? I'll tell you my story. I was born in a kingdom far away from here.
Which one?
A dead one.
A dead one?
Oh, that's right. You eggheads all see the neat and tidy map of Battleworld and think the kingdoms we have now are the only ones that have ever been around. But you do know that Doom created this world where there was once nothing. You think that all those little worlds he cobbled together, that they were all going to get along together peacefully? You think there weren't any kingdoms that didn't want to rebel? Or at least try to? No, Battleworld sits on the ashes of the dead. Those who were too brave, too proud, or too stupid to listen to Doom and his Hammer Squad. My kingdom. We obeyed all right. But we had a bit of a problem with our neighbors. Or maybe they had a problem with us. I'm so old now, it's hard to remember. I'm not even sure if I bothered to learn who started the war between my kingdom and the next. I know I didn't care. When I was younger, I had dreams of war. Like every kid who joins up with a military outfit, I guess. I saw my city getting shelled, and I figured I'd enlist. Serve my nation. Do my mama proud. Sorry. My sense of humor ain't what it used to be. I was an idiot. But I did have one better reason to enlist. Cancer was eating me up from the inside out. It's been that way for as long as I can remember. And I sure as hell wasn't going to get any treatment without selling my soul to Uncle Sam. So I joined up with the Super Soldier program.
You're a super soldier?
It's just a name, kid. We had all kinds of programs going back then. There were the usual injections, gamma radiation therapy, vibranium bonding, all kinds of sci-fi shit. Me? I was a special case. What with the whole dying thing, they needed to get me something a little extra. So they cut and fiddled and poked around with my body. The agony of that time. I lose track of how those science guys experimented on me. If they really were scientists, and not just some GIs who had gotten their rocks off doing freaky surgery shit. You know, I don't think I'm as old as I feel. But put a man through enough, and he just doesn't come out the same after. They say I'm crazy, but crazy doesn't define how broken I am. I remember things wrong. I remember. Have you ever heard of stars?
No? What are those?
I don't know. But I remember stars. Anyway, pretty soon they gave me a fancy new healing factor. A whole lot of weapons training, and even this nifty teleportation belt. A rogue mutie broke that thing a few years into the war, but it saved me from all sorts of trouble before he did. And after I was finally fit for duty, I was nearly taken right off the roster. Unstable, they said. Paranoid, schizophrenia, they diagnosed. Who the f*** do you think made me that way in the first place? But my cancer was gone. No, not gone. Never gone, but managed. It still hurts like hell. It's only getting worse. But pretty soon, some stuffy officer decided they had spent too many resources and way too much time on me to just put me on the benches. And I finally got on the front line. By then, I'd lost all illusion of being a good soldier, serving with honor or distinction. I saw a lot of kids who didn't get a wake-up call until they were dropped right on the front line. Guys who just got one quick injection and were suddenly super soldiers. The problem with that, well, what do they think happens when they take some scrawny kid and give them muscles to lift a truck and the dexterity to dodge bullets? They think they're immortal, that's what. At least until one of their buddies gets their head ripped off by a combat-ready Hulk. Yeah, that was fun to find out about. That other side also had a super soldier program. That our enemy was pumping out freaks of nature as fast as we were. You look like a book-reading kind of guy. You ever read about what happens to civilians in a regular war? All those rapes, accidental killings, collateral damage. Well, imagine what happens to the civvies when both sides are fighting with Hulks and super soldiers, with Iron Men and weird spider people.
His eyes glaze over, and his body language changes. The happy-go-lucky drunk I had spent the day with has been replaced by a wartime veteran, beaten and broken.
It was a bloodbath. A slaughter fest. I don't have the words to describe what I saw. That little foray you just watched in the Colosseum? The one that has you pale as a ghost and ready to piss yourself? On my quietest, least bloody day, I saw more shit than what you witnessed. Easily. It's not even a contest. I would have given anything for something as simple as that little scuffle you just watched in the arena. That was nothing. It was controlled. Everyone there was a willing participant. It isn't exactly the same thing when you're fighting in the middle of a city. Women and kids running around, screaming and sobbing. Shells flying everywhere. And a giant green behemoth charging straight at you, blood dripping down his chin and nothing but cold, calculating rage in his eyes. And you never could quite tell if the dude charging you was on your side or theirs. Not that it mattered. That war was about survival. Your own survival. Never mind the idea of rescuing people. Any notion of fighting the good fight. Or even the idea of us versus them. No. My war. Every moment of my life, it has been me against the world. There were no heroes where I came from. There were no refugee camps. There were no safe zones. Best thing to do was just to put the civvies out of their misery. Like I ever had the balls to do that. Sure, I might be a monster. But I was still a person. Not like some of the others. Sure, you would see some decent people. People who tried to do the right thing. None of them made it very far. I watched entire families get eaten alive by Hulks. I saw super soldiers crack under pressure, becoming rampaging lunatics. Saw too many of them turn to craven survival. Say what you want about me, but I never raped any women. Or worse. This time, I came across these kids who had holed up in a bunker. It wasn't a bad idea. They were safe from the shellings. What they were not safe from was the tracking abilities of the super soldiers. By the time I found them, they... I need a drink.
He goes quiet. It is some time before my companion speaks again.
It was death. Death. And more death. That was, and is, my life. I couldn't wash the blood out of my uniform. I eventually just made my own little outfit, mostly red. No need to clean it that way. I used to make jokes to get me through those long, unending days of war. I don't make many jokes anymore. At least not any good ones.
And how did it end?
It didn't end. It went, and it went, until there weren't any more people for our two kingdoms to throw at one another. By then, the entire command structure was gone. No more rosters, no more civies, no more war. Everything was gone. What few of us were left found ourselves alone in the wasteland, the sole survivors of everything I once knew. We left. I found myself here, in this miserable existence. Made a good amount of money in the Colosseum before my useless body finally started to give up. The healing factor is finally starting to burn out. Not much left in old Wade Wilson. Not anymore. I think that's why Doom let me and the others cross domains. What threat could we possibly pose? I remember something I once read. Doom himself wrote it. War does not determine who is right, only who is left.
Bannerville, Arcadia. I come to a small hamlet outside of Arcadia's capital. This farmland is idyllic and peaceful. Aside from the city, plains stretch out around me as far as I could see. I walk by pastures of livestock and arrive at my destination, a small, one-room cottage surrounded by a brown, worn-down picket fence. My host greets me and introduces himself as Luke. I shake his hand, and I can tell it is calloused and rough from years of working in the field.
Nobody thinks about where all the food comes from in Battleworld. All the infrastructure. They think about all the sexy things. The Thors, the zombies, the superheroes, and the mutants. But how do you think all these people are fed? Well, aside from the zombies, obviously. Everyone knows where they get their food. The last estimate by Doom's Future Foundation pegs the population of world at somewhere around 10 million people. That's 10 million mouths to feed. Not to mention most of Battleworld is a desolate wasteland. You have domains riddled with radiation, pathogens, and Doom knows what else. You have the Forbidden Zones and domains that are nothing but urban sprawl or untamed jungle. As far as I know, there are only about a half a dozen domains that can grow squat. And Arcadia is one of them. Can you believe that? 7, maybe 8 domains at most to feed well over 50. It's an impossible task, and that's my job. To make sure not only my domain is fed, but all of our neighbors as well. You think that put me or Arcadia at some sort of advantage. After all, if the Kingdom of Manhattan needs to be fed, shouldn't we hold some leverage over them? Shouldn't I get something to afford a lifestyle better than this for me and my family?
He gestures over to a crib with an infant sleeping inside of it. The crib sits beside a straw bed. Both look handmade. I, however, am curious about one thing. You trade with other domains?
No, none of that for us. Our Baroness is a good woman. She looks out for us. But Doom has very strict rules on this sort of thing. Quotas. Embargoes. And do you think I get paid for making those quotas season after season? Hell no. The only pay I ever get from Doom is good fortune to not have a Thor come knocking at my door if a harvest goes wrong. Or if there's a drought. I know a lot of people around here who aren't so lucky. We had real bad dust storms a couple of years back. The kind of shit that wipes out entire fields of crops. We made it through that okay, but the next town over? Well, let's just say there is no next town over anymore. And don't get me wrong, I am lucky. You hear stories about forced labor camps outside of the Regency, or slave plantations in Bar Sinister. Now, like I said, our Baroness is a good woman. She looks out for me and mine like they were her own. And that's good enough for me. She makes sure my little one has a fair chance in life. An education and a roof over her head. At the end of the day, that's the only thing in this exhausting, worthless excuse of a life that matters.
He looks back over to the crib and smiles.
My little sweet pea. She'll be a part of A-Force one day. Just you wait. She'll have a better life than her old man. She has to.
Prison Camp 63, the Sentinel Territories. It takes a long time to get through security in order to arrive at my next destination. Were it not for my paperwork bearing the seal of Battleworld's sheriff himself, I would never have gotten this far. Even then, my documents are checked and rechecked by cold, dead-eyed humans. They even make a call to Doomstadt to confirm I am who I say I am. My genetic structure is screened on 3 separate occasions. I am thoroughly questioned, I am repeatedly scanned, and they search every inch of me for weapons. At one point, I must have said something to offend one of the guards, as I am nearly turned away for no other reason than what I am told is an attitude problem. I am forced to wear a collar that inhibits powers I do not have. Finally, I reach my next subject, a prisoner of the Sentinel Territories. Her only identity given to me is number 44616. She is a young woman with bright blue hair. Her face is badly burnt on one side, and she has the uncanny look of hopelessness on her face that I have seen in too many other mutants.
Mutant. What does that even mean? For as long as I can remember, the humans have been at war with us. An entire species who, in their eyes, deserves nothing more than death. I couldn't care less, really. I was identified as a mutant with alpha-level powers from birth. Do you understand what that means? My entire life has basically been within these walls. I have done nothing to threaten or harm anyone unless in self-defense against other prisoners. And even then, it's not like any of us here can use our powers. Do you know that not once have I ever used my powers? I don't even know what my powers are. I wake up, I eat. I do my work duty, I eat. I go out to the yard to exercise, I eat. Then I go back to my cell where I do nothing until I go to sleep. That's my life. Well, that was my life. That's what it was like for as long as I can remember. Some of the older mutants have memories of being free, but I'm not sure if that's just a delusion. I think they've convinced themselves of a better life that they never had. This is the fate of all mutants on Battleworld. You can be a prisoner, a fugitive, or a monster. Quite the buffet of choices. But that's not why they wanted you to speak to me. It was a few months ago that I was woken up in the middle of the night by shouting. It wouldn't be the first time. Some mutant who can't take the unending repetition of life in a mutant prison camp tries to escape. Or just gives up and wants the Sentinels to end things once and for all. Some just tear their inhibitor collar right off. That happened once, in the cell right next to mine. He was a friend of mine. One of the only others I ever had. He was a sweet, handsome boy that always tried to keep the guards off of me. He would report any of them that got too, handsy. I think eventually he just gave up. I understand it's common in any prison. You lose track of time. You lose any will to live. He ripped his inhibitor collar in 2. The explosion completely wrecked his cell. I still can't hear that well out of one of my ears. There's nobody around who reports on the guards anymore. Anyway, one night, the screams sound different. Frantic. I hear gunshots and the unmistakable sound of a sentinel powering up. But then I don't hear it fire from those awful beams it has head to toe. I hear metal bending, and the screams get louder. Suddenly, the entire well my cell backs onto shatters around me. I got up in a hurry. I'd heard stories about freedom fighters, but that's all I thought they were. Stories. Who could really stand up to the unending masses of sentinels? But there before me stood a man. He seemed larger than life, like he took up the entire space around the hole where my cell's wall used to be. He wore all white with his long, flowing cape. I couldn't see his face. He was wearing this helmet. All white, covered everything, but I could make out his eyes. He reached his hand out to me and offered me a chance. He said there was a better life out there for us, a future for our people. I couldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it. Even in my sheltered little world, closed off from the inside, I'd heard rumors of the legendary freedom fighter who could bend metal with his mind. But for him to be here, in my little cell, the only home I've known for as long as I can remember, as awful as my time was here, this was my life. Prisoner 44616. That is all I've ever been, and all I ever will be. I was afraid. To attempt an escape? That's a death sentence. So I refused to take his hand. I said, no, leave me alone. I'll never forget those eyes. He looked so broken at those words, so ashamed. Those eyes told me everything I needed to know. In that moment, I broke his heart. For everything he said about our kind, our hope for a better tomorrow, I dashed all of those dreams with one simple act. Of course, I was right to do so. The guards were on him in an instant. They had these strange plastic guns I'd never seen before. They got the drop on him and took him down. He bled all over my cell's floor. It didn't matter that I had refused my savior. The damage was done, and my punishment?
She unconsciously reaches to one side of her face. It is badly burned.
I was punished for an attempted escape. They still don't trust me with full privileges. No more yard time. No more work duty. This is the first time I've been anywhere outside of my cell since that fateful night. And that's why they wanted you to see me. To let the rest of the world know that this is what happens to mutants who step out of line. This is the fate of those who anger our God. I don't know what Doom thinks of us. Is he afraid? Is he just a monster? I'm told Baron Kelly has no choice in the matter. Between the will of the God and the will of the people, this is where we mutants are to stay. I think that's what bothers me most. I never met our God, but I've met humans. And they want us here just as much as Doom. They're afraid of me. And I don't think I'll ever understand why.